And welcome to this week's Mailbox, where we're taking a look at some of the more interesting comments that have appeared on my videos from the last week. This week it's going to be a lot about the videos I was doing on the new player experience, with Blizzard's news that they are planning a long-term major revamp. So pretty much everything's open as far as we can tell until they start saying things. So I'm going to talk about that, but there's going to be some comments about other things, including Classic WoW at the end as well. So, I have to just say, this is the second time I'm doing this. I have just finished recording. No, that's not true. I have just finished doing the mailbox for this week and then found I hadn't recorded it. So let's try going again. So, first of all, we have the mailbox from last week. What we do at the start is we say, where's the mailbox? So from last week, this is where it was. And we can see that this is Emberstrife's den. So a number of people got this correct. Well done there. Someone sort of seeming to suggest it was part of the Onyxia quest chain. Is that just for Horde? Because for the Alliance, all it was, Emberstrife was just there to get you into Upper Blackrock Spire. Now, of course, that was tied a little bit with Onyxia because Black Dragons, but it was really another quest chain, really. But anyway, there we go. There's Emberstrife's den. And actually someone's sort of saying as well, actually where you're stood is not quite Emberstrife's den. Actually it is. If you stand there, it does say you're in Emberstrife's den. You don't have to actually be in the cave for it to be classed as Emberstrife's den. In fact, when you get just there, that's when it pops up. And the reason I study that specific case is because I said for those who it might just look like a cave any old where, there was a small insubstantial clue, and what it was the shadow you can see of a dragon or a drake or whatever flying overhead. Anyway, so this week's, so you need to be able to say where it is and in which zone it is, and that's this week's mailbox. So let's get on. So first comment. So someone's saying about it's not daunting, it's a terrible, unrewarding grind. So let me just contextualize this for those who've missed it. So after BlizzCon, they did the Q&A, and there were some people there with their question cards who never got time to ask their question live at BlizzCon. So what Blizzard said is, all right, we'll answer. You've turned up, you've put in the effort. We'll answer your questions for you. One of them was talking about the daunting new player experience and about level squish. Now, having previously said no to level squish, they did seem to open the crack a little bit at BlizzCon. I don't know whether it's genuine or not. But on the answer to this that they posted on the forums, and I was amazed at this, because for the first time I can recall, they've actually admitted that yes, it's a daunting experience for the new player, and that they are looking at a long-term major revamp of that. So that's why I've been talking quite a lot about these sort of things, even though some of them are ideas I've had some time ago, just because it may now be more topical to get some ideas going while Blizzard are actually working on it. And then, but someone said here, it's not daunting, it's a terrible, unrewarding grind. Well, the two terms are not mutually exclusive. And then someone else, similar sort of thing, saying, I'd rather more think people find it just boring rather than daunting. Now, this may be true. It may well be true that there are far more people who just find the leveling experience boring as compared to daunting. But it is daunting for a new player. And it is also the only thing that Blizzard will actually freely admit to. Because the fact that it's daunting is a consequence of the fact that there's a lot of levels to get. With lots of expansions, this inevitably will happen if you do it in the way that World of Warcraft do it. Now, and daunting is just a perception. Boring is a perception as well. But daunting is just a perception. It's something you do without even trying it out. A new player says it's daunting. That's because they're told there's 120 levels before you get to level cap. Bear in mind, from a new player's point of view, why are they playing the game? They're doing it for one of two reasons. Either friends have persuaded them to play it. But if those friends have been playing it for a long time, why didn't they persuade them earlier? That sort of thing. But, so some players will get into it because their friends persuaded them to. They will also get a lot of support from their friends in getting up and all the rest of it. But then there's the players who are just new players. They've the game's been out for a while. They've been aware of it, but they've never really... It's a bit like me suddenly watching Game of Thrones all of a sudden after God knows how many years. As I've bought a box set that's got Series 1 to 7, I should think at least 7 years. Because for the longest time I was going, no. And then I went, oh, all right, then it might be good. And but you look at it from a new player and you go, okay, 120 levels, that's a lot. And then if they did a little dig in and try and find out roughly how long that's going to take them, that really would be daunting as well. But yeah, there is... So Blizzard will admit to that because it isn't necessarily a poor reflection on them. It's just the state they've got into because the game has gone on for so long, which, is a positive thing. But now they're looking at it. There is no way that Blizzard would ever come out if someone said, oh, it's very boring, and say, yeah, we agree, it's really boring for a new player. Then they might as well just not allow new players to play the game, because that'd be the kiss of death. So even though it may be true that more people find it boring than daunting, people do find it daunting, and they're never going to suggest that it is boring. So, that being said, let's go on to some of the more practical things that people are talking about. It says, don't recall if you said how much time it should take to get from 1 to 110 or the starting level of the latest expansion, but I don't think it should be more than 10 hours. 10 hours is next to nothing. It's got to take... There's no point in even having leveling if it's only going to take 10 hours. 10 hours is nothing. You got to think about what the purpose of leveling is. Now, here's the problem with World of Warcraft at the moment, and this is why I think they have to get the time it takes to level just right. Like, just right. So in the video when I was talking about these story arcs in each zone that tell a specific story, when I first mooted this idea a while ago, I also suggested that the reward at the end of it automatically boosted you to a particular level. So Elwyn Forest, for example, when you get to the end of it, whatever level you happen to be, it should, if you're below level 10, it should just automatically boost you to level 10. When you get to Westfall, it should automatically boost you to, say, level 18 or something like that. If you're already at that level, then okay, that reward is not relevant, it's not there. But it should allow you to go so that you can plan it. You're going to say, right, I'm going to do the story arcs for these zones, and I'm going to, at the end, you will be the right level at the end of it. That way, if you only want to do that central story arc and no other side quest, then that's fine. It'll just boost you to the level to go on to another zone after it. So you don't have to do all of that stuff. That way, you're much less likely to get bored. But those side quests will still be there for you if you want to do them. That was the idea there. And then, compared to other games, so Elder Scrolls Online, for example, I always say, what I do in Elder Scrolls Online with a level cap player, it's not Paragon level cap, but it's level cap player. So I could do endgame and all the rest of it. What I do when I'm playing Elder Scrolls Online on that character is no different to what I'd be doing on a character I'm still actively leveling. In that case, you don't have to worry too much about how long it takes to level. If, you're still doing the same things when you get to that level cap. There might be a couple of extra things to do, but you're still effectively doing the same things. Like when a new expansion comes out for Elder Scrolls Online, you can just start doing that whatever. World of Warcraft, you can't. And that's the thing you have to think about from the new player's point of view. They've come into it. What's attracted them? Probably an advert. They've looked at all the shiny stuff. And what are those adverts going to be billing? Is it going to be, showing them the exciting quests in Westfall and Feralus? No, it is not. It's showing them, Kul Tiras, Zandalar, Island Expedition, Warfronts, the new dungeons, the new raids, none of which are available to that new player. And if that new player is going to spend 5 or 6 hours a week, let's be honest, it's not going to be available for that new player for a long, long time. That's the problem. But 10 hours is not enough. I think, the purpose of leveling is it's an advanced tutorial for the game, how to play the game. And also, it introduces you to the story of the world. Now, the problem is, it gives you the current leveling problem is that you spend way longer leveling than is necessary to get to grips with your character. And I don't think it teaches you anything about the world. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would suggest that for a new player who knows nothing about Warcraft, right? A new player playing level 1 all the way to level 120. If I were to then ask them some questions, and I don't mean super obscure questions, I mean just like basic questions about, say, the invasion of Azeroth by the Orcs, about Guardians of Tirisfal, about Elemental Lords, Titans, Old Gods, the Void, about the Dragonflight, the War of the Ancients. You know, if I were to ask them questions about any of these core aspects of the Warcraft story, I don't believe they'd be able to answer even the most rudimentary questions. I don't think it teaches them anything about the world, because the quests as you go through now show you nothing. The problem is that in the 1 to 60 revamp, the questions just became completely soulless. They don't tell you anything. And, you know, it's like Westfall is feeding peasants and trying to track down someone who's getting revenge on a thing that happened some time ago, but it doesn't tell you about that thing. You know, the Defiance Brotherhood in this case. Or wandering around the Plague Lands on someone's caravan, collecting things. That doesn't tell you anything about the Scourge. It's all an absolute nonsense. And even the ones in the later expansions that they haven't monkeyed about with, you were only picking up the bare basics. And then the idea, the way the storytelling works in World of Warcraft is you get into the real meat of the story at level cap. But you never do that anymore. So in TBC, as you know, you do the initial stuff, but you don't do the Illidan quest line. You know, in Wrath of the Lich King, you're not really going to do the Arthas quest line. So you're not going to learn about these things. It's, but yeah, but I don't know how long it should actually take. I really don't know the answer to that. You know, I could throw a number out and say, well, 50 hours maybe. But I don't know whether that is good or not. What I do think is, though, that Blizzard have probably got access to some data that they could use. They must know how long new players are playing before completely stopping their subscription. Try and look at that and look at it and think, right, this is about how much of our quest leveling that they can stomach. Let's try and work it around that. Obviously, if they improved the leveling experience and made it more engaging, maybe they could run it a bit longer. But they've probably got to look at that. But I mean, because I have no access to that data, I have no idea. Next one, voicing quests. So I think you're right, they should squish the level maybe even to 60 and make a more narrative path for people to follow so they can enjoy the story of the zones. Can in turn keep quests that have nothing to do with the story and then give them extra stuff like toys, transmogs or pets. I thought the idea Bluely had a while back of voicing the old quests was a great idea. No. The problem with that, I mean, there's a fundamental problem with that, is that it would take far more resources than is worth it. It's not worth it at all. Anything they do to old quests at the moment, remember, we've already established, I think, that it's boring. The old quests are boring. Running through the old quests is boring for new players and veterans alike. Voicing them isn't going to make them any more interesting. And it would take a vast number of resources. And remember, they already regret, it's a shame they didn't regret it with forethought as opposed to hindsight, that 1 to 60 revamping Cataclysm because of all the development time it took. The other thing is, like, for me, because it's a bit like when I'm playing classic WoW demo, you know, and you had the style of quest where, you know, you click on a quest and it does the writing thing, like that. And of course, in interface options, as you can now, you could in vanilla as well. It's always been there. You can just say, no, just give me the quest in one go, I'll read it in my own time. Or not read it and just grab it and go and do it. Of course, in vanilla, you had to read the quest because it didn't just mark on the map where you needed to go. But I can read a quest a lot quicker than someone can say it. I find it annoying when we have the talking heads doing those quest things. Some people don't. That's fair enough. So what I would maybe say is a compromise, what you could do is you could have it for major quest arcs. Like, let's say they were to do what I'm suggesting, which they won't. I don't think it would be that popular. But let's say it were. They could do voice acting for the major quest lines, but then not the side ones. Possibly. But the idea of the voice acting, it just slows it all down. It's a bit like in Star Wars: The Old Republic. It's actually what put me off. You know, I played the demo of Star Wars: The Old Republic, and then I didn't play it when it came out live, even though I had it. Of course, that's how I got into the beta. I didn't like it. It's what put me off, all that voice acting stuff. It just made it take forever. It warmed to me after a while, though, I have to say. So next one, it says, I think they're already addressing the levelling issues. The nerfs they've done with the amount of XP needed has dropped on average 25% per level and 40% for the 60 to 80 bracket. They also nerfed the amount of XP you get from dungeon fight. Blah blah blah. Yeah, so it's quick. Yeah, well, they nerfed the amount of experience so that you have to go out and quest and not just do the dungeons. But I mean, I've already said about that. You know, the thing is, when you cut off a particular type of behaviour, you potentially turn players away from the game, right? I mean, if people just want to sit in a city and click on the dungeon finder, just let them. But anyway, that's aside. I've talked about that enough before. In terms of reducing the XP needed, it's a good thing, but it's not addressing the issue. It's not addressing any leveling issues. Because, I mean, you can argue one leveling issue, it takes too long. It still takes too long even with these reduction in XP needed. Still takes way too long. So, but the problem with the leveling issue is it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. It doesn't, from a new player, and again, I'm going to keep coming at it from a new player point of view at the moment, although veterans, of course, have a stake in leveling stuff as well. It teaches you nothing about the story of Warcraft. It takes longer than is necessary to teach you how to play the class. You know, the fact that you can go whole levels at a time without getting any extra abilities. I mean, if you're not even getting an extra ability to learn, what's the point of the level, is what I would say. There should never, ever, ever be a level you get where you don't get a new ability. Because that's what the leveling is for. Your character is growing, you should get a new ability. You know, you get a few abilities to start with, you learn how to do those, get another ability, and you know, you in each level you get the level will take whatever amount of time is required for you to get to grips with that new ability, and then you get the next level, another new ability. That's what it's for. Teach you about the world while you're in there, and then get to level cap. And if they had full zone scaling, that wouldn't make a nonsense of all the quests that you don't now need, because there would be a reason to do them at level cap. They'd still give rewards, whether it be gold, whether it be gear that scales up to whatever seems appropriate. You need much less reliance on world quests then, because you could have people go out and do those quests in old zones because they'd all scale, and you'd be getting level appropriate rewards as well. And that would be way, way better. But yeah, it doesn't unfortunately address that issue, which is one, that it's daunting. Doesn't matter how much, you know, they could nerf it so it takes 5 minutes a level. Someone doesn't necessarily know that before they've even bought the game. They just see 120, and that's not a good thing. And it doesn't stop it. It doesn't make the content any more interesting. And although it reduces the amount of time it takes you to get up there, let's put it this way. Let's say, you know, you say about an average of 25% per level. So let's say that it now takes you 3/4 as long to get to level 120 as it did before. That, let's say the average new player was only getting about 40% of the way that they needed to before stopping playing the game. That's not going to help, because at that point they've already stopped playing. Do you know what I mean? It's still not helping, because I don't believe that people are getting to the, you know, getting 3/4 of the way through by time, not by number of levels, before they're stopping. I would believe it's much lower than that. Obviously, some new players are carrying on, but you know, but a lot of them I think are just being lost before we've even properly got them into the content, because they're watching an advert for it and saying, "Oh, look at all this new stuff! Oh, I can't wait to try that out," and then they can't try it out, except with the level boost. So next one, it says the whole leveling experience is boring and just a big repetitive Groundhog Day. So yes, I think we've probably established that now. I think lots of us agree with that. It says make leveling interesting and not so mundane. How about class quests for each zone with the same start and end, but the journey getting to each zone conclusion being significantly different, therein making each class quest experience different and more unique. Here's... It says Blizzard won't do this because blah, blah, blah. No, it's not Blizzard not do it because it's too greedy, because it's just not feasible. They regret doing it in Legion. They had a lot of class quests in Legion. Now, it wasn't exactly... Because their problem was that for a particular quest, for doing a thing like getting your artifact or whatever it was, it wasn't 12 lots of... Well, it was more than 36 specs, really. But they weren't having to do 36 times as much of it. They reused a lot of stuff. But nonetheless, it was quite a lot of content being designed for a quest, or a short quest line. And a lot of people weren't experiencing it. Like a given player, unless they had every class and spec in the game, which some did, but that's a small number of people. Most don't, and they're not experiencing all this stuff that they put all that effort into. So they won't do that just because it takes so much time. Now, one thing that a lot of people draw parallels with here is, of course, Star Wars: The Old Republic. Star Wars: The Old Republic is a game where each time you level on a different class, it's a very different experience, and people laud this as a great feature. But in reality, even the developers of that game looked like they regretted it, because if you look at the leveling experience in Star Wars: The Old Republic now, and first, if you think World of Warcraft is on rails, you wait till you've played Star Wars: The Old Republic. It's properly on rails. It sends you through a story. Like every now and then, it gives you a couple of quests you can do. One is on one world, one's on another world. And you can do them in any order, but you're still doing both of them before you get onto the next two. And when you go to that new world, you get the main quest line for that world, which is the same no matter which character you do it on. But then you get one that's a class quest, so that'll be different on different characters. So that does make it a unique experience, because they weave in and out. They're not just in parallel, they weave in and out of each other as well. They're very interlinked. So it makes the experience very different, granted. However, what it means is, the leveling experience is very rigid, very on rails, because that's the consequence of that. And the other thing is that you can see that when the first expansion started to come around, they stopped. They don't do them anymore. The storyline after that, the first version, is the same for all the different classes realistically. So even they regretted doing it, because it was straight up. There's 8 classes, which means 8 different storylines there. And that was 8 times as much stuff had to be done. And a player that only plays one class is only going to get to see 1/8 of that content. And that's just, it just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense to do that. So although it would be brilliant for us, the resources required to achieve it, they'd never get the go-ahead to do it. They would never get the go-ahead. So there we go. Anyway, so next one, it says, level squish is needed. As for previous expansions, they have to accept that it should be bundled as old content. Then they can start with quest pruning and revamp. Revamp would be turning kill number of mobs quest into a world quest that will only show up once when leveling and can be reused in the end game if they want. So that would mean there wouldn't be a need to talk to an NPC for that world quest. For players who didn't do that world quest, the next part of the quest line will not unlock, so the story can't progress. Pruning quests not relevant to the story can also be done so that zones could finish quicker. That way players will have more zones to explore. Now, I don't think they should prune quests. The reason for that is I was disappointed with the level 1 to 60 revamp, because there are a lot of quests in there that I liked that are no longer there. And there'll be some quests, if you just prune ones just because they're irrelevant, some people may enjoy them. They might not be relevant, but they may enjoy them. So I don't think they should get rid of a quest. In terms of finishing zones so you can get more zones to explore, that's where my idea for the story arc running through a zone, not like the ones they have now which are irrelevant, don't tell you anything, but I mean one that actually educates you in a particular part of the history, make it a very prominent quest line so it encourages people to do it. Maybe make other quests less prominent so they're still there, but you don't necessarily have to pick them up. I mean, they did that with Star Wars: The Old Republic as well, just going back to that. Now, I was talking about this like last year or the year before, and I was under the impression that, because it's a game that I keep coming back to. Usually I play it over Christmas. Really weird. It's like a Christmas tradition almost now. But I quite like going to Hoth. But anyway, and I was saying at one time, they've pruned all these old quests away. And then someone was saying, no, they haven't. They're still there. They're just not very prominent. You can easily miss them. And they could do the same thing there. Have your major story arc and then other quests that are there, but not very prominent. No one's really pushing you to do them. But what I really super agree with is this idea of, for previous expansions, they have to accept it should be bundled as old content. Absolutely. They need to get away from this idea that you should do some classic WoW zones, some TBC zones, some Wrath zones, some Cataclysm zones, and so on. Do some zones in each of these expansions. No, don't. Once an expansion is done and dusted, it shouldn't even be considered an expansion anymore. There is the new content for the current expansion, and then there is the old content, which is your current content leveling bit, which should be done in any order. They really shouldn't try and push this idea, because the problem is that's why it's taking too long to level, because they're saying you should really do a bit from this and a bit from this and a bit from this and a bit. No, shouldn't at all. It's old content. Leave it. Just decide how long it should take. How long will people put up with doing the leveling content before they get to the stuff that they want to do, that they saw in the advert that Blizzard put out there to try and attract players? Those adverts, how long have they got to wait before they can do that content? And don't talk about the level boost, because that's a one-shot thing. And although you can do your trial thing, it gives you very little chance to actually genuinely try out the class. If they use that level boost on a character and they end up not liking it, and you know, it can take you some weeks of playing World of Warcraft before you get to properly to grips with the mechanics of the game. And if you use that bloody boost, then you know, you might have ended up rolling a class that is not suitable for you, and you're stuck. So they shouldn't think of that being a solution to the problem. You know, how long can they realistically get up and be doing this new content? It's got to be a lot quicker than it is now. A lot quicker. Not 10 hours, but a lot quicker than it is now. And the only way to do that is to get rid of this mindset of classic. They shouldn't actually even be thinking classic content, TBC content, this content. Again, when I play Elder Scrolls Online, I don't even know what content's what. You know, I know, you know, an expansion, I sort of know the Morrowind stuff because I played it when the Morrowind expansion came out. And can't remember the name of the latest one, Somerset, whatever. I sort of know that. But other stuff, I don't really know where it came in, because if I wasn't playing at the time, it doesn't matter. It all, you know, and someone playing Elder Scrolls Online now who just buys the expansion, but they don't know what's what, doesn't matter. They just go wherever. Whereas in World of Warcraft, they you know, they all have these identities which don't help once it's no longer current. Anyway. PvE faction says, been meaning to say this every time I hear you say something about faction PvE shouldn't be a thing. I was actually on a Wrath private server that did this for raiding. Remember going to ICC, and after the second boss we'd split into Horde and Alliance to make it around the trash on the airship. Round about that, for some reason they just didn't remove. They had Horde NPCs on one side and Alliance on the other. They made a boss fight to replace the airship fight on the Alliance area to board the ship. Blah, blah, blah. And then there was the other one in the faction champions and Trial of the Crusader as well. Those are two situations where if they removed factions, if they dissolved factions just for PvE, that would be an issue. You're talking about 2 encounters in an expansion a long time ago, which, you know, people would just solo now anyway. I don't think that would be an issue. I mean, apart from anything else, what they'd probably say is, okay, if people want to do this in an actual group, I mean, people solo that now anyway. But okay, if you want to do it in an actual group, just do some caverns of time type thing for that, where an NPC gets hold of you and says, oh, this is from a time when, you know, it was unheard of for Horde and Alliance to group together. Maybe you should decide which you're going to be just for this little bit of history. And then you all agree to either be Horde or Alliance. And then if you agree to be Horde, all the Alliance players get turned into orcs or something. And if you agree to be Alliance, all the Horde players get turned into gnomes as punishment. Something like that, that would work. So that's what I would do there. But I wouldn't worry. Again, it comes back to the previous comment about old content is old content. Just lump it as old content. It's done. And not worry too much about it. Obviously, the fact that the next raid is going to have a difference depending on whether you're Horde and Alliance, but then there is some cosmetic changes to your characters coming in there, just like when we went into the Black Morass and stuff like that anyway. But there's a couple of cases there where it wouldn't be entirely compatible, but I don't think it would take much to sort it out. Right, next one, it says, I am a new player. Wow, I didn't know I got new players on the channel. It says, I am a new player for about 2 months, and my experience has been so confusing so far. Yes, I can well imagine. It says, I tried leveling 1 to 121st, and that was fun for a while, but I wanted to try the new story. Which is exactly my point. I mean, this is just my point, isn't it? You can take so much of it, and for a lot of players, not all, but for a lot of players, what they want to do is the new stuff, the stuff that's advertised, the stuff that's talked about in interviews and stuff like that. They're not a part of it, and that's the problem. A new player is not a part of because World of Warcraft is 2 games. There's the leveling, and then there's the current content stuff. You can't do island expeditions while you're leveling up. You can't, we can in the later, but not up until 110. Can't do Warfronts, you can't do the new raids, you can't do the new dungeons, anything like that. And you can't do the new zones, because whereas like Elder Scrolls Online, keep going back to it, and I'll keep boring people with it, but it's because it does it well. In fact, it tries to get you in the new thing. If World of Warcraft was run like Elder Scrolls Online, when you rolled a new character, it would send you off to either Kulturas or Zandalar. Straight into it. You don't need the level boost. Straight in. Go on, knock yourself out. It doesn't do that. You can't. You don't even have the option of doing that. So, yes, annoying. Anyway, that's not the point I would want to make. It says, using the 120 boost still has to be going in circles. Thank God everyone's been so nice to me in dungeons. I also found a guild and they help a lot. And this is excellent. I wish more people would do this and find a guild. You were lucky about people being nice in dungeons. But the guild is so important. I see so many people who whine and gnash their teeth about issues they're having doing group content. It's all born of the fact that they're doing it in pugs. And if more people would just go, look, this is the content I want to prioritise in WoW. You might want to do all sorts of content, but there'll be a particular piece of content that you particularly want to do, or that is particularly troublesome to you in a pug. Find a guild that has, that is at your level, that wants to do that content. Find a guild, a nice guild, and do it with them. All these problems disappear. They melt away as soon as you start doing things in a guild. And I just wish more people would do it. There are some things, some aspects to group content that, yes, I think Blizzard should help out with and not just blame the community. But there are some things that are people's fault because they refuse to join guilds. And then they whine about pugs. That's because pugs are horrible. I mean, imagine trying to play football where every time you went to play a match, they gave you 10 random people to play with you never met before, and you were trying to play a team game like that. No. Work together. Play with people you know. It's much more fun. And no one's like, you don't then get those selfish behaviours, or very few of them. I'm not saying never, but it's much, much, much less. And everyone looks out for each other and helps each other. Anyway, next one. Right, on some classic stuff to finish off with. So what we were talking about here was the fact of, Blizzard's argument, quite frankly, is the feeling special. They remove the feeling of special if people can go back and get those transmogs that are no longer available. So someone here says, but that won't stop people feeling that Blizzard has devalued their unobtainable transmogs by letting people reobtain them. Blizzard never upvalued them, to be fair. This is people placing a value on something because it's unobtainable. It's not unobtainable because it came out for a special event. That's what actual unobtainable loot is. Stuff from Classic, and I have some stuff from Classic, is only unobtainable because either it came from quests, like the sword you can see with my rogue, that they removed with the 1 to 60 revamp, which they never should have done. Or it's like tier 3 armor, which they didn't put when they made because they were lazy. They got rid of the old Naxxramas, made the new Naxxramas, put those same armor sets in, but recolors of them. So it was just that. If instead of removing the Nax, they'd have just designed an actual raid for themselves in Wrath, then that would never. Nax would still be there. We could still go back and get it. Or if they did get rid of that Nax and got the new one in, but they'd have kept the same versions, at least for the 25-man version of the gear, again, it wouldn't be an issue. It's only an issue because they did recolours of that tier 3 and didn't allow the original colours of them to be in the game. And then there's some other items you can get from Nax, like I have Death's Bargain, for example. I still have that. which has never been used. Not even a recolored version of that has been used. It's got to be one of the most unique items in the game. That's the only reason. Blizzard have never said it's unobtainable. Ever. And so, no, it's not that. And people who say, going on about, I spent all this money on the black market auction house to get it. So what? Who gives a shit? Blizzard never said at any point, we're never going to allow this to become available in the game again. As far as I can tell. I've never seen them say that. That's people deciding that at this point in time, they want that. And then look at it from another point of view, right? So transmog's not going to be in. Okay, we'll accept that. So now you've got people, because this is the other thing. It's not like people can just play Classic and get the tier 3 gear. They've got to get themselves geared up for Molten Core, get themselves a raid group, progress through Molten Core, progress through Burning Crusade, Blackwing Lair, Anchorage, then Nax and complete Nax, and get that gear. The amount of time and effort it would take to do that is way more than the time and effort necessary to farm the gold on the retail version to buy all off the black market auction house. So actually, the people who are obtaining that gear but can't use it in the retail version of the game, they're the ones who should be pissed off with this. They're the ones who are having their gear devalued because Blizzard is saying, no, it's quite right that someone who spends some gold should be able to look like that in the retail version. And you who've worked for it and actually spent a couple of years working and spending lots of hours doing all those raids, no, you shouldn't be allowed to do it. You're not special. You didn't spend any gold. It's a complete nonsense. Anyway. So next one. So this was looking at my Paladin playing Classic WoW demo, saying 3 judgments, 2 mobs. How long are you taking to kill quest mobs? Not as long as I will be doing when it actually comes out properly. Because when, on that Classic demo, when it gave us our character at level 15. Westfall, which is the zone we started in if you're Alliance, starts at level 10. You go to Westfall somewhere between level 10 and 12. Depends how much of Elwyn Forest you did and stuff like that. But somewhere between level 10 and 12 is where you'd naturally roll into Westfall. So I was between 3 and 5 levels higher at that point. Plus, it gave me some starter gear, which I am telling you, I can't remember exactly what gear I was in, of course, at the time at level 15. But I do know that it was not as good as that gear. It was not. Because I know I still had some white gear, including a white weapon at that time. So, yes, when I'm actually doing WoW Classic, my gear won't be as good, and I'll be killing a lot of those mobs at lower level as well. It will take me even longer. So I probably won't be doing them on the Paladin, because I've already said I'm going to be doing 2 characters at once. So I'll use a DPS character to actually, Hunter or Rogue or something. Probably Hunter. Next one. So someone's saying here, I think you have this transmugging Classic issue wrong. Classic players don't want incentives for rolling on loot to be changed. It's bad enough that everything is a hunter weapon. So, this will never happen. I can only understand someone even thinking this might happen if you've never played Classic WoW. If you played Vanilla WoW at the time, you will know that this will never ever happen. Rolling for loot didn't happen in the way that you think it did. This is how it actually happened. Okay, there was an automatic roll on loot. When you were leveling up, you just use group loot, and that just meant item drops, you roll, you say, oh, I need that, blah, blah, blah. Then maybe get into a fight with other people. It doesn't matter. At level cap, that never, ever, ever happened. It doesn't matter whether it was a guild group or a pug group. Master loot was used. And here's how it worked. The people who needed it would roll. The people who won it, they wouldn't just get it. Other people who'd wanted it would be inspecting them. If someone raised an objection and said, I don't think you need that, other people agreed, you wouldn't be getting it. I will give you an example. This was not uncommon. So there came a point when I was playing Classic WoW when I wanted to get into raiding, and I'd reached an epiphany. I'd realised, paladins can actually heal. And it might sound like an obvious thing, but it wasn't at all. When the channel was relatively new, I did a video on it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So what I realised was, in order for me to be able to do effective healing, it was no good in my Imperial plate gear with no intellect or healing bonuses. I needed gear with intellect and healing bonuses to heal. This didn't really exist, not for paladins. There was no plate with healing or intellect on it. So it was only mail for shamans, really. So even back then, paladins were not really given very nice things. So I tried to find, so where are the bosses that drop this gear so I can build it up? So I was in a Strathome run, and we're doing the cannon boss, and he dropped a belt called the Barrage Girdle, which is mail. And it dropped. No one else needed it. Of course not, we're Alliance. No shaman healers. I needed it. And I said, I need that. And the view was instantly taken. It's mail. You're a paladin, you wear a plate. So I wasn't allowed to need it, but I needed it. So, and what happened was then, so if no one needed an item, if there was an enchanter in the group, they'd always try and include an enchanter in the group. I was an enchanter. What would happen is it would be turned into whatever, because it was more valuable in that form than as vend, like a large brilliant shard in this case. And then the person who won the roll on that would get the shard. So the only way I could get that belt was by saying, hang on a minute, all right, here's what we'll do. Everyone roll. Whoever wins it, give it to me, and I'll give them a large brilliant shard. That was the only way I got to get that belt. So if you think that someone in like epic raid gear is going to get to go into, say, Strathome and pick up a blue item and roll for it saying they want it for transmog, there is a 0 chance that they're going to get it. And then people are also forgetting this as well. So let's say you want to play WoW Classics, you can get some transmog gear for retail version. The character that you're actually rolling for that item on is very likely to be an upgrade anyway. They are actually going to use it. So all it does, allowing transmog, all it is going to do, it's not going to change the way looting is done. It's only going to increase the number of players that are playing it. So the people arguing against it on those lines are fundamentally wanting Classic WoW to be a failure. That's ultimately what they want. They're actually wanting it to fail. They want to actively reduce the number of people who play it. Because there is 0 way. I mean, the only way people would even do it is doing what they did in Vanilla WoW anyway. If you went in and there was an item and you thought to yourself, if people inspect me, because let's say it was a side grade. Let's say you had a relatively decent chest or whatever, but you knew you needed slightly different stats or something for a particular encounter. But you looked at it and you thought, well, people, I've got this and I really want this. And people will say it's not an upgrade if it drops. So people would just deliberately go into those pucks wearing a crap item in that slot, just so that it was very clearly an upgrade for them, so they'd get to roll on it. And people may do the same thing for transmog. But they did that anyway. So that's all there is to it. That, but yes, anyway, and as I say, I've already talked about the back market auction house thing. That's their own lookout. Okay, next one. I need this image for a particular purpose. There we go. It says your gnome hatred. Why don't you just go to the hood then? There's my character. Hello. It's not a high elf. That is actually a blood elf, which I believe is Horde. But then the other thing I should say, just in general, it says, gnome hatred, why don't you go Horde then? So for a lot of time, I was still Alliance, of course. The answer to that is simple. Only a coward runs away from what they dislike. Why should I have left the Alliance just because of gnomes? The better thing to do is exactly what I did do, which is to bully and kill them. Obviously, I did end up going Horde, but it wasn't to get away from gnomes. So there we go. There's the answer to that one. Right, and that is this week's. Hopefully it is recording. I've checked that it's recording this time. So hopefully that is that done. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, share with other people who might be interested, comment down below, in particular if you know where this mailbox is. And until next time, I'll see you later.